Well, things have finally gone terribly wrong for the Bengals, and a Trey Hendrickson deal may be right around the corner. We'll talk best landing spots on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Spencer German. On today's show, we are going to talk about the Justin Fields crash out for the New York Jets over the weekend. We are going to do a rookie quarterback update, and we got two rookie quarterbacks that we need to discuss that Spencer knows very, very well. But first, we're going to talk about the big news in the NFL from over the weekend that Trey Hendrickson may very well be traded soon, as the Cincinnati Bengals are listening to offers. We're going to talk about where we think Hendrickson could go and what it means for the Bengals. Before we do, thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen, for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Trey Hendrickson finally reported to the Bengals a couple of weeks ago. There was thought that might lead to them getting a deal done, but after a couple of weeks of Hendrickson being in the building, things haven't really moved very far. And I just want to remind folks of a recent update we got from Locked On Bengals when Hendrickson arrived.
But I do think that there's clear-cut disagreement on where the Bengals are versus where Trey is hoping to be and expects to be. Time will tell when that gets done, if that gets done. But I'll say this. It's good to have Trey in the building. It's good to have Trey talking to Shedeur Stewart. I'm sure people have seen clips of that already, helping Shedeur Stewart, having him in the building around the guys. That does matter.
Apparently it does matter, but not in the way that you want, because Hendrickson is now still in total disagreement with the team. A trade seems more likely. Shedeur Stewart is knocking down Joe Burrow and causing fights at practice with the Bengals last week. Spencer, are you with me that this is just an insane thing for the Bengals, and they should just be paying the guy who led the NFL in sacks last year?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of in the camp, and I might have been on an island with this one, that they should pay Trey Hendrickson even over T. Higgins. Like, I know T. Higgins is great. I know that him and Jamar Chase is a duo with Joe Burrow, and you're trying to keep your franchise quarterback happy. It all makes a lot of sense. But listen, like, you could easily go into the draft and find like another number 2 receiver to play with Jamar Chase, and it would have been probably okay because Jamar Chase is that good. Like, he frees up other players to make plays. So I was kind of surprised that they decided, hey, you know what, let's go all in with the money that they do have. We know that the Bengals are sort of notoriously in these situations because they don't like paying guys. They don't have the disposable income that some other owners have. And so for them to sort of focus purely on that side of the ball, I get it to a degree, but I kind of felt like Hendrickson is the cornerstone of your defense. He's a guy that you need. He's the one player that you know you can count on to make plays. And I get it. You drafted Shedeur Stewart, but he's still a rookie, very much has a lot to sort of develop and come along, and he's not just going to be Trey Hendrickson immediately. Like, I was surprised that they didn't make that a bigger priority, and then it felt like, okay, maybe they're finally going to get this thing done, because life in the NFL, all these guys, when they come up for a contract, receivers, defensive ends, whatever, they all request a trade. I saw this in Cleveland this past year with Myles Garrett, and it usually ends with them just getting the contract that they wanted anyway, and they stay put. But this one's just been different, and him not showing up to camp, and then he finally did show up to camp, but we were still sort of heard like, well, he's not really, we're 3 weeks into camp, but he's still not really doing anything. He's just kind of here, and it started to become more obvious that maybe this is going to be different than the other situations that we get around the league when guys sort of hold out or hold in. So, yeah, I was surprised in the beginning they didn't give the money, but now it's gotten so ugly that it sounds like a divorce is the only path forward for these two.
And the Bengals aren't a team that does a lot of trades or is often involved in this kind of stuff. So the fact that the Bengals are actively listening to trade offers, and that's the new update and the new report, that they are literally taking offers from teams, I think that shows us where this is at and how far apart they still are. And the Bengals are like, we don't think this is going to get done. We better start hearing some offers. And again, you pointed out some of their younger players. Myles Murphy hasn't developed. Dax Hill hasn't developed. A lot of young, highly picked talent on that defense that should have helped them have a better defense hasn't really panned out. So now I'm supposed to believe that they're going to take an even more raw prospect in Shedeur Stewart, and he's going to be able to balance out the difference of losing Trey Hendrickson. It just seems like a fatal mistake for the Bengals if they don't get this done. But now we're hearing that there are certain teams interested, like the Panthers, like the Colts, like the Browns even has been listed by Jordan Schultz, I think it was, for Fox. I got to tell you, Spencer, when I hear those teams, to me that sounds like the Bengals going, oh, you want to trade? Well, here's what we'll send you. You can go to the Browns, you can go to the Panthers, you can go to the Colts. Have fun with that. Check out their quarterback situations. See how much you'll like your contract when you get over there. I thought it was funny that it seems like Hendrickson's agent was like, yeah, they're actively looking for trade. Somebody come put a trade offer in. And then the Bengals were like, yeah, these are the places we might trade you. You better think about that contract. That's what it felt like to me, because I hate all of those options. The Panthers, no offense, but the Browns, the Colts, I guess the Colts, maybe you could talk yourself into them having a pretty good roster and being able to give a decent young player back, but none of those teams seem like the type of team that I think Trey Hendrickson would make for, which, I'm looking at teams like the Packers, who are rumored to be interested in Micah Parsons. They are a team that needs that extra superstar veteran push. Teams like the Eagles are always going to be involved. But what about the Bills? The Bills really could use a big superstar and go all in. The Lions have been looking for that guy across from Aiden Hutchinson. Out of all these teams that we're hearing, which ones do you think are the best fits for Hendrickson if he does get moved?
Yeah, so of the three that were mentioned by Jordan Schultz, I will say, like, obviously having the intricate details and insight into the Browns that I do, the only reason the Browns are sort of like this fun, intriguing option for somebody like Trey Hendrickson is, listen, you get to line up opposite of Myles Garrett. That's a pretty fun thing to do. Like, they could have a lot of fun together dominating on that defense, and there is the idea of this, what could be with these 2 first-round draft picks next year. Maybe their franchise quarterback is only a year away, and if you get a contract worked out, well, now you're here, you're sort of in the building, you and Myles Garrett.
There's no way. They're not going to trade him to their rival. They're not going to do that.
To your point, that's never going to happen. So it's fun for Browns fans to dream about that here in Cleveland. But honestly, of all the teams that you threw out there, like, I think it would be a lot of fun if the Bills, who for years have, we know what their shortcoming is. They get to the playoffs, and they always just cannot get past the Kansas City Chiefs. And there would be nothing more all in than being like, you know what, this offseason, we added Joey Bosa, and we're not stopping. We're also going to add Trey Hendrickson.
Yes.
And we are going to do everything in our power to replicate what the Eagles did in the Super Bowl last year, which was just send waves and waves and waves of defensive linemen at Patrick Mahomes and disrupt everything that he does and finally get over this hump. It kind of feels like, because of how bad it got dominated in the Super Bowl last year, that there's kind of this window in the, okay, maybe this is kind of the year they're ripe to sort of get the best of in the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs or like fall off a cliff. I'm not going to do the Tom Brady thing where we all try to predict his demise and say this is
this
the
will
end.
Be the year.
Right. I'm not doing that. But like, hey, I can guarantee you they're probably going to make the playoffs, and they're probably going to be in a team like the Bills Pats. How are you going to finally get over that hump? Go build a super defense that they just can't beat when you have Josh Allen on the other side. I would love to see him go to a team like Buffalo. So that's kind of the one that I'm circling, is like, hey, if that happens, watch out for the Buffalo Bills. If they're not already Super Bowl favorites, I think they would obviously propel themselves into that conversation or be that team with a move like that.
And Sean McDermott is a guy you look at, and in the playoffs, his defenses haven't been able to make that big play to help out Josh Allen in the offense. It's always been the defense, and Sean McDermott is a defensive guy. So at some point, it's like, hey, maybe just his great coaching alone isn't enough. We need to really load up on talent. I like that. I am skeptical, though, of, again, it's not quite the Browns, but the Bills are seen as like, one of the top contenders in the AFC, and it would probably not go over well with Joe Burrow in the locker room to trade your best pass rusher and the leading sacker to a team who you view as direct competition. So that's why I think my best fits, I love Buffalo, and in a perfect world, I'd love to see that. But my I guess, best fits, I think, are NFC teams where the Packers. I think the Packers have one of the youngest rosters in the NFL. We say that every year, and they always make stupid, dumb, young mistakes and can't make the big play in the big moment. Why? Because they're one of the youngest teams in the NFL. Like, it makes sense that they would kind of mess up in these big clutch moments because they're all young players. Get one older veteran in there who can lead these guys. It could be your Reggie White 2.0. I grew up on Green Bay Packers football, and seeing them add Reggie White was the last thing that they needed. That's why I think the Packers or the Lions, who I think really need something to flip their momentum with losing the coordinators and kind of the vibes around Detroit aren't as exciting as they've been in recent years. I think adding that would be a big help for the Lions, but it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens with this situation. We're going to be here to break it down on Locked On NFL, but let's talk about some actual football that happened over the weekend because we got some exciting stuff to talk about with these rookie quarterbacks. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges and gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But do you know how any of that actually works? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. That's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real, personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something you saw on social media. I've worked with BetterHelp before, and what I like the most is they have over 30,000 therapists, the largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. So you know that you're going to find a therapist that fits perfect for you. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Spencer, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Trey Hendrickson situation, some good landing spots there for him. Now I want to move to the football that did happen over the weekend, week 2 of the preseason. Some rookie quarterbacks out there, and we got to start. We got to take advantage. I got my guy Spencer subbing in for Legacy Louie. We got to take advantage of the Cleveland Browns' knowledge and ask the question. So Shedeur Sanders sits with the injury. We'll get an update on that injury, how severe you've heard that it might be. But Dillon Gabriel gets his first opportunity in public live action, I guess, in a game, and seemed like he played pretty solid. You cover it. How would you describe Gabriel's performance and then the Sanders injury?
Yeah, so the word that I used after the game was complicated. Because I felt like the operation was good. That was the good stuff. Like, he was able to move the ball up and down the field. He didn't look like it was too big for him. He made some really good throws, really good on third down as well. He was converting those, getting the ball, getting the offense up and down, and continuing these drives and putting some points on the board. He had 3 total scoring drives. But what complicates it is you have the 2 bad plays that is the only thing anybody's going to remember. He threw the pick 6 on a very similar play, by the way, that Shedeur Sanders ran to score a touchdown the week prior. Now, I will say his receivers didn't really – if you go back and watch that interception play, it was supposed to be like a levels concept, and 2 guys basically ran to the same exact spot on the field, so they didn't help him. But Dillon Gabriel needs to just throw that ball away. And that's a rookie mistake. It's something that you learn. Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be the end of the world, but everyone's going to remember that play. Everyone's going to remember 2 series later – he didn't quite get his drop back right to hand the ball off on a play, and it gets fumbled, and that's a turnover for the Eagles as well. And so those 2 things stand out, which make it complicated. And no matter what, like, Dillon Gabriel cannot avoid that no matter what happens in his career, especially as long as he's here with the Browns, and especially as long as him and Shedeur Sanders are together with the Browns, he is going to be compared to Shedeur Sanders. And nobody could tell you leaving that game yesterday that he had a better performance than Shedeur Sanders. It was good. It wasn't great. I would say Shedeur Sanders borderlined on great, if not being great. It was a really solid performance. Everyone was really excited about the fact that he showed you the promise that people thought he had during the pre-draft process. So I think that sort of sets the stage here for an interesting decision when it comes to what the depth chart's going to look like for the Browns behind Joe Flacco. Because for those who aren't following the Browns closely, Joe Flacco is going to be the quarterback one. If it wasn't already decided, I was at joint practices with the Eagles on Thursday. He was awesome. He was slicing and dicing the Super Bowl champion defense up and down the field. I walked away that day like, listen, this thing's over. It's Joe Flacco. And so what the depth chart sort of looks like behind him is going to be interesting. There's never going to be a right answer because the team loves Dillon, and my guess is he's going to still be higher than Shedeur Sanders. But we know that the Shedeur Sanders fanfare brings a lot of debate, a lot of controversy. People are going to be upset if he's not ahead of him. And I personally think he's done enough this training camp, this offseason, during the preseason, at least so far, to feel like he should be ahead of Dillon Gabriel. I think he's the better player of the two, but the Browns are probably going to do it differently. And then it also comes down to this crazy quarterback room that they have. But it'll be interesting to see this week. Browns are going to treat this week as a regular game week, so they'll practice 3 days, get off Friday, play on Saturday against the Rams. Kevin Stefanski told us on Sunday that it's likely we're going to find out who the starting quarterback is this week at some point. It sounds like he wants to tell the team before he tells the media, which makes some sense. And then from there, maybe they'll both be able to play in this preseason game after Flacco, and that'll sort of be another chance for us to compare the two and see what we think. The question is, of course, as you mentioned, what happens with Shedeur Sanders with this injury? And obliques are tricky because even Kevin mentioned, like, if it's an offensive lineman, you could probably play through it. But it's a quarterback, and you need that oblique to be able to throw the football. They've said it's day-to-day. That can mean a number of things. 2 years ago, Deshaun Watson was day-to-day with a shoulder issue early in the season, and he didn't play for a month. So I don't trust the Browns when they say day-to-day anymore. We don't know what that means. But what I will say is the fact that he was out there the second day of joint practices, still in full uniform, and he was doing some handoffs. The fact that he went through warm-ups and everything on Saturday in full uniform. If it was too serious, I don't even think he would be doing those things. So I think they're sort of being cautiously optimistic here. And the hope is that you get to see both him and Dillon next week. And that'll sort of be the final audition for these guys to sort of set the depth chart wherever the Browns decide to set it.
Well, that would be nice. And listen, I got my theories. I put my tinfoil hat on all the time. I just have a feeling that, to put Shedeur Sanders over Dillon Gabriel, you would basically be admitting that you sucked at the draft and you took a guy who wasn't as good as another guy, way higher. Gabriel was 98, 99, 94 right in there. And Sanders ended up going 130 or
144.
144.
It was exactly 50 picks later. Ironically.
There you go. See, I'm right when I'm not even trying, baby. But yeah, like to only go through training camp, and man, we were 50 picks wrong on these guys, and they should have been different. I think I can't help but think that there might be a little pride and ego and making Shedeur Sanders do even more than you would think to get over the hump on that one. But
no, I understand those outside perspectives on that. There probably is some of that. Like, GMs don't like to admit that they're wrong. Obviously, they like to stand by the picks that they make. And listen, I can understand too. I've understood the entire time. Maybe not initially. When they first made the Dillon Gabriel pick, I was like, what is this? We were all very perplexed by that. But
I still am personally.
I am too. But when they explained it, and it was like, listen, we went through the pre-draft process with him, and they like a lot of the intangibles with him. He's a leader. Yeah. He can get in and out of a huddle. He knows how to sort of run an offense. He has a lot of experience in college. He was there 6 years, right? Like, he bounced around all these different teams, saw a lot of different offenses, and he ran them all very effectively. They liked those things about Dillon, on top of the fact that he has a strong arm. I still question if he's the right size. Like, can he play at this level at the size that he is? That's the biggest question for him. And I don't know. Like, jury's still out. I thought he looked pretty good on Saturday, but I still have my doubts. But at the same time, like, they are going to give Dillon as many opportunities as they can, because you're right, they took him ahead of him. And so that's the reason I don't think the depth chart's going to change. And my biggest thing, especially the diehard Shedeur fans out there, is like, this organization has screwed up so many quarterbacks over their history. If the worst thing you can say they're doing is being patient with Shedeur and making him like continue to kind of earn it, then that's okay. Because I'd rather because he's the one that I want to see really succeed here, and I think has a chance to succeed, especially in Kevin Stefanski's offense. And so if it's going to take him sort of sitting for a little bit, learning behind Joe Flacco, maybe Dillon gets thrown to the Wolves first this season at some point, I think that's okay. And then maybe he's more ready to go at the end of the season, and then he takes it and runs with it. So we'll see. But it's an interesting situation, and every day is a debate with this Browns quarterback situation.
I would call that I would call that good result, bad process, though, is what I would say.
Yeah.
And I've also said on the show that it's fair to have skepticism of a Browns QB plan based on the results. But I am hoping that Shedeur works out in Cleveland as well. But hey, Dillon Gabriel is out there. He's a competitor, not an entertainer, Spencer. He's a competitor, not an entertainer. I didn't want to talk about that too much because we know. In
fairness, I
understood
what he meant. Yeah, but I know there's that people tried to run with that one. He was talking about the media versus like the players. I'll say this: no matter what you think about Dillon Gabriel, he has been 100% like the biggest team guy there is. Like he only ever talks good about his teammates. So him taking a shot at Shedeur Sanders, I don't think was in any way what he planned on doing there. So
everybody knows that what that quote is going to be used to do and how it's going to look and all of that. I can't even bring myself to pretend that it was serious. But do want to talk about Jaxson Dart because he once again had a very, very good preseason performance for the New York Giants. He was 14 of 16, 137 yards, 1 touchdown. He has showed all of the talent. And I mean, Russell Wilson had a big time moon ball in the middle of the second quarter for a big gain as well. But how quickly do you think Dart could get on the field here? I mean, he looks way better than what I expected. I wasn't big on Dart and Shuck. Those were the two guys. I liked Sanders and I liked Ward. I didn't really care too much for Shuck. I liked Milroe too, as if you're going to take a project. I liked Milroe as that project, and he's looked solid as the third stringer in Seattle, but he's not going to get his time this year most likely. But Dart could be a guy who gets on the field. I think it's smart by Brian Daboll to roll with Wilson no matter what, because then you could bring Dart in like the last 5-6 games of the year, and if he looks good, might save your job no matter how bad your record is or you do with Russ. But, man, Dart keeps looking like that. It's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
It's funny. I was just texting with some media friends yesterday as that game was going on and asking that exact question of like, how long until he supplants Russell Wilson? And the sort of consensus seems to be that Brian Daboll is like sticking to his guns. He's like, Russell Wilson's our quarterback.
Smart.
He said that.
That's smart.
I like your theory on, hey, and Jeff Fisher did this for years. Jeff Fisher was the king of like, hey, at the last second, we have this shiny new quarterback that we can throw out there. And we can, like, he did it with Jared Goff. It was like, oh, hey, we drafted Jared Goff. This was at the very end of his time there. It was like, well, we can put him out there and see if he's the guy for us and sort of try to save my job. I don't think it worked for him. But like this is what these teams do, right? Like they get that quarterback and it's kind of like a get out of jail free card if he looks good, because you might have just identified your franchise quarterback and it prolongs your
and you can't set him back and put him in a new system next year. You don't do that to him. Ownership. Don't do that.
For a coach to prolong his tenure with the team. So I kind of like the way he's going about that too. But man, like I've been very impressed with Jaxson Dart because my biggest concern for him, and I know it's the preseason, not a lot of scheming going on. I get all those things. They try to keep things relatively simple. I've seen that with the Browns and Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel as well. But like for being a guy coming out of a Lane Kiffin offense that is very like read and throw, they don't really do a lot of like going through progressions. He makes his offenses very simple for his quarterbacks.
Yes.
I like the fact that he seems to be doing a little bit more of that and like making the plays that need to be made. And he's had some really nice passes on top of it. Yeah. I wonder when it becomes undeniable. And if Russ struggles, it's going to be very, very loud there in New York. But certainly have to be excited if you're a Giants fan about what the potential future looks like with Jaxson Dart.
And this is what I take from preseason success all the time. It's just the preseason. We all know it. We all say it. It feels like anytime you talk about a player doing well or anything, you got to say, it's just the preseason. But at the end of the day, I'd rather see a guy play well than play bad. So if you're Giants, you can always say, oh, it's just the preseason. You can't. And you're right. But I would much rather Jaxson Dart look the way he looks right now than look bad. You know what I mean? Like, Cam Ward went 2 for 7. It wasn't a bad performance if you watch the tape. But, like, I would much rather have 14 for 16, 100-some yards and touchdown than, 2 for 7 and 40 yards. Like, let's just be honest about it.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Tyler. It's one of those things where it's like if they look good if they look bad in the preseason, it's a problem. Because if they don't even look good in the preseason, it's like, okay, this guy might not be able to make it at the NFL level. If they look good in the preseason, yes, there's context of, well, it's the preseason. There's going to be, there's still room to grow. There's still things he has to learn, and that can be fine. But you basically, like, you can't have them look bad in the preseason. If they look good, there's some context there. And I think that's the important thing to remember here is that you'd rather have them look good and know, okay, maybe this isn't the full picture, but at least they're not struggling, rather than bad and know, we might have a problem here.
And it's even worse, honestly, if you're a veteran player and you look pretty miserable, which is what happened with Justin Fields in the Jets offense. We're going to talk about that. Today's episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year, folks. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing, and this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me, probably Spencer, are going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, because Yahoo has been doing this for a long time. They have perfected the draft day experience. They have perfected the fantasy football app. And to celebrate their 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August to kick it off. They just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, Spencer, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Trey Hendrickson trade situation. We did a deep dive into some of the rookie quarterback performances. Now I want to talk about some veteran situations, and we start with the crash out we saw from the New York Jets, because Justin Fields looked pretty rough in that matchup against the New York Giants. But my guy John from Locked On Jets said it's not time to panic.
I'm not saying Justin Fields played well against the Giants. He did not. It was a poor performance, but he only threw 5 passes. 5 passes are not enough to judge a quarterback. You could find the greatest quarterback in the history of the league. I don't care who you want to pick. Brady, Montana, Unitas. They had 5 pass stretches during their career, which went poorly. You can find the worst quarterback in the history of the league. He probably had a 5 pass stretch where he looked pretty good. It's a very small sample size in an exhibition game. Fields played well against Green Bay last week. That doesn't mean he's on his way to an MVP season. Fields played poorly against the Giants. It does not mean that the Jets are doomed. It's a small sample size in a preseason game.
Okay, listen. John is my guy. But let me fan the flames of panic, all right? Let me hammer the panic button. Give me Thor's hammer to hit the panic button. The Jets haven't been just bad in the preseason game. The offense has not looked good in recent practices either. Justin Fields is not a rookie. This isn't a rookie like we're talking about this is a veteran, and for him to look as bad as he did, the offensive line looks good on paper, but there are big question marks. Outside of Garrett Wilson, don't like the skill position players from the Jets. You know, Aaron Glenn is already talking, he's a aggressive, in-your-face coach, and I like that. But he's already calling his team out after the preseason game, saying they haven't been playing well enough. I think the Jets are a team that can be frisky and fun. Like, they're not going to be completely boring as long as Fields is in there running around being crazy. But let's not mistake fun for good. I think there's no way that this Jets team is good this year.
No, I don't think so either. The hard thing is, and listen, it pains me because coming to the NFL, I thought Justin Fields had the chance to be pretty good. You can see the little Ohio State helm on my shoulder there. I'm an Ohio State fan. So
Buckeye bias.
Yeah, there you go. Like, I wanted to see him succeed. He was awesome at Ohio State. I loved following his career. And I felt like Ohio State had finally produced a quarterback that was like ready for the NFL. It ended up being the next quarterback that came out in CJ Stroud instead. But yeah, listen, like the problem is that this has been the story with Fields pretty much since he entered the league. You know,
yes.
There's been some moments where he shows he can do some things. We know he's a freak athlete. The running is never a question. He can do a lot with his legs, and you could gear your offense around what he can do from an athleticism standpoint. That's fine. But the throwing has always been inconsistent. The passing has always been inconsistent. And I don't know that like this preseason has kind of been that same, pull and push of what are you going to get from this guy when you put the pads on and you go off in the field in a regular season game? Is it just going to be him running around creating plays with his legs like he always does? Or is he going to show you go through and read a defense and make all the big time throws and actually lead this offense to some level of success? So I think that's the problem that I have with it, is like it's more of the same for Justin Fields, and we've just never seen him take that turn or turn that corner and then stick with it and actually like keep producing at that level. And so I think those questions are going to surround the Jets throughout the preseason now. I think they're certainly going to surround the Jets throughout the regular season. And I think you're right. It probably sets the stage for a team that is competitive, but I don't think that their quarterback situation is resolved in any way, shape, or form with Justin Fields, as much as I wish it was.
And I think that there's a good chance that they know that too, and this is just kind of a punt, kick the can down the road, be as competitive as we can be with the assets that we had for Aaron Glenn in his first year. He's going to turn over that locker room to get his kind of guys in there at the depth positions already, so we know that's going to happen. But at the end of the day, to me, with Justin Fields, I get the don't panic, it's preseason talk, but I know a lot of quarterbacks say they use the preseason to learn and take chances and see what they can do, but Justin Fields is an accomplished enough quarterback to feel like, he's out there experimenting. And if I have a friend who's late to everything all the time and they show up late to my rehearsal dinner, I could probably pen them in for being late to the wedding too, because they've shown it before. If it's a rookie and they're learning and they've never done this stuff before, then I've a little more understanding, I guess. But Fields is just doing the same stuff we've always seen from Fields. Now, I do want to, before we cap off today's show, talk about the Terry McLaurin situation, because the Commanders activated him from PUP, which some people are saying, hey, deal incoming. But my guy David Harrison from Locked On Commanders thinks this could just be part of the negotiation.
Another day out here in Ashburn, and another new development in the Terry McLaurin situation. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast, and out here on Saturday for what we thought was going to be kind of a light, breezy, early morning practice. News coming out before practice that Terry McLaurin has been activated off of the physically unable to perform or PUP list. Was not seen out here at practice. Not a big surprise, as the team tends to handle injury situations with a ramp-up period. That's exactly what head coach Dan Quinn said that the team is doing. But it's also hard to deny that there is this little nagging in the back of everybody's minds on whether or not removing Terry McLaurin off the PUP was another part of the tactics between the two sides to getting Terry McLaurin on the field, new contract or new contract. So for more on that, my opinions on that and everything else Washington Commanders related, make sure you check out the Locked On Commanders podcast 5 days a week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
See, while he was on PUP, he's in the building, he's not getting fined. But if he's off PUP, he's active and healthy, and now he's not practicing, now he's not getting fined. It's almost like, hey, you've been doing the hold in, we've tried to work it out with you, you're healthy, we know it, we're doing this as to try to find common ground, but we've had enough. It's time to get on the field, we got to get going. I personally think that it is that sort of leverage move, but at the same time, I saw a clip of Dan Quinn on the sideline at practice, and he's talking to the GM, and he's like, if I do a barrel roll where you give Terry McLaurin a new contract, and literally Dan Quinn, 50-year-old head coach in the NFL, does a barrel roll on the ground in front of the general manager. Like, I'm sorry, you only do that if you know that a contract's coming. So I think this podcast comes out Monday. I think, honestly, Sunday night even. By the time you hear this, we could have a Terry McLaurin deal. I think this thing's imminent, and I wanted to make sure that we hit it here before the end of the episode, because I think a Terry McLaurin deal does get done this week.
Yeah, I felt like David maybe stole those glasses from Terry McLaurin, because that tint was intense. I was like, man, like this is like the I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to see you tint on those glasses. And maybe he was like, hey, I don't need these anymore because I got a contract coming, so you can wear them for your hit. Yeah. No offense, I love David. So, but no, great. Listen, I think you're right. I know Dan Quinn was asked about the him being removed off the PUP list, and basically said like the two things aren't related. But coach, like, listen, this is one of those situations where like coach speak, a coach is going to only tell you so much. Like we're reading tea leaves here. I know how that goes, because reading Kevin Stefanski's press conference is like the hardest thing in the world. He tells you absolutely nothing. So like it's one of those things where like, you take it with a grain of salt. I think without question, this feels like the next natural step towards, okay, he's getting closer to practicing with us because we feel like we're getting close to a deal. And this, unlike the Trey Hendrickson situation that we talked about earlier, this feels like it was this always felt like it was going to end this way, with Terry getting the contract that he wanted, him sticking around. He's at a tough age, and that's why, like in Cleveland, everybody was talking about like, oh, trade for Terry McLaurin, and I was trying to tell people like, if they were going to pay Amari Cooper last year, who was going to turn 30 and wanted a new contract, they're not going to trade for a guy who's right. It makes
they're not going to get as much back as they would for like
exactly.
DK Metcalf went for Pittsburgh. Like you're just not going to get that for McLaurin at his age.
It just doesn't make sense. And the natural sort of ending spot for this always felt like, let's just keep him home, keep him with the team that he's been familiar with. He's been with his whole career. And so it does feel like, to me, like it's getting resolved despite what everybody else is saying. But I did think those antics from Dan Quinn were kind of funny. The barrel roll thing and all that. Like, it certainly feels like, if you, again, read all the tea leaves, this is heading in that direction. And we'll see if by the time this airs, it's actually been a done deal.
Yeah, I think it's going to get done eventually or soon. And honestly, outside of all the mechanics of the cap, and as football fans, it's way cooler if Terry McLaurin just stays with Jaden Daniels and they just rock together. Well, that makes more sense.
And frankly, like, when you have a young quarterback like that, like, it's the same for the same reasons the Bengals, I guess, paid T. Higgins, and they were like, we want to keep Joe Burrow happy. You got this young franchise phenom quarterback. Like, the whole point now is, you can pay these guys. You can spend money on these guys. You have the guy in the rookie contract right now at quarterback. So
take advantage.
Do what you can. Don't mess with a good thing, right? Like, keep this guy around. Don't let the team take a step back. And that's why some people are very high on the Commanders in general this year. Others think they're going to take a step back. But it makes sense for them to just, like, do this, keep them home, keep everybody happy, and see if they can make another run at the Super Bowl like they did last year when they got to the NFC Championship game.
100% makes the most sense. It's what we want to see. It's what needs to happen. And I'll be back this week here on the Locked On NFL podcast to talk about it when it does. But that's going to do it for today's episode. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host Spencer German. Thank you guys so much. As I tell you every single episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.